Ahoy! Welcome back to Leia's Library. Find yourself a cozy corner, get yourself some tea, and let's get started. Today we will be going over books with no romantic subplots, or no importance placed on romance. This list I focused primarily on YA or adult books because middle grade books don't often have romances, and if they do, they're very, light. Nobody's trying to tear each other's clothes off. That would be problematic. So we're focusing on YA and adult. What else? Oh, and some of these books, the characters, there are characters who are in relationships, but that relationship is not in any way a focus of the story. So yes, this video is primarily directed at my fellow aces, but a lot of these books are really, really good. Actually, I think all of these books are really, really good, so I think you should read them anyway. But yeah, that's about it. Let's get into it. Okay, so the first book on the list is The Giver by Lois Lowry. And this is the only one that I'm not sure fits on this list because I've seen it described as a middle grade and as a YA. I thought it was middle grade when I first read it, but I don't know, I've seen it advertised as YA a lot, so it'll tentatively take a place here. But it is a dystopian fiction. It follows Jonas, who is a 12-year-old boy living in a seemingly perfect world full of contentment and conformity. However, when he's nominated as the receiver of memory for his town, he begins to uncover the dark secrets behind his town's perfect facade. So in this book, instead of romance, you get lots of intrigue and disturbing mysteries being uncovered. Ooh. There are sequels to this book, but between you and me, I wouldn't recommend them. I thought they were really bad compared to this one. Which I don't like calling books bad. But compared to this one, they were of lesser quality, because this one is very good. I really like The Giver. So if you want to get your best The Giver experience, just stop after the first one. But yeah, this one is really good, and there's no romance. Next up, we have Piranesi by Susanna Clarke. This is an adult fantasy / mystery. This follows a man who, for all intents and purposes, is called Piranesi. It's not his real name, but it's a name that's been given to him, and he goes by it. And Piranesi lives in this giant labyrinthine house. There are an infinite number of rooms. Some of the rooms are flooded with the ocean, and there are birds flying around, and there are thousands upon thousands of statues everywhere, each one completely different from the other. So that's fun. I would hate living here. There is only one other person who is there with Piranesi. He's a man who goes by the Other. Well, that's what Piranesi calls him. Piranesi calls him the Other. And the Other enlists Piranesi's help in researching a great and secret knowledge, but we don't know what this knowledge is. But there is evidence to suggest that there is in fact a third person there. And as Piranesi delves deeper into this mystery, he discovers things that unravel the only life he's ever known. There's a lot of really good suspense and atmospheric world building in this book. Piranesi's house is, for lack of a better word, really cool. And the ending left me questioning a lot of things, so that's always fun. And Piranesi has 0 love interests. None. He doesn't get out much, so... Next up is a book that I've talked about before. It's Poison by Chris Whitting. This is a YA horror fantasy about a girl named Poison. She's a very stubborn and very willful girl who lives in the Black Marshes, which is kind of like Australia in that everything wants to kill you. And when her baby sister is stolen by fairies, she immediately sets out to get her back. This is one of my favorite books of all time. It was in my favorite books of all time video. I read it first when I was like 13 or 14, and it gave me my first existential crisis. Baby's first existential crisis. So yeah, we love that. It is spooky, but not scary, just spooky. And also if you're arachnophobic, sucks to be you if you pick up this book. It's a spooky sort of anti-fairy tale. It has a lot of fairy tale tropes, but they're often subverted or scrutinized in really interesting ways. And our main character, Poison, has no love interest, and what she gets instead is this beautiful little found family, and I love them so much because found family is one of my favorite tropes, and I love all of them. Peppercorn is so sweet, and then there's Bram, and he's just the best. He's like capital dad, and it's just like everything is so nice. Anyway, I really liked it, and you should read it. Next up is Neverwhere by Neil Gaiman. This is another adult fantasy. I think this is specifically an urban fantasy, if I'm not mistaken. This is about, it's about a lot of things, but our main character is Richard Mayhew, a typical businessman living his typical businessman life until a single act of kindness catapults him into a world beneath London called Neverwhere, a city for those who've fallen beneath the cracks. At once eerily familiar and utterly strange, Richard is now thrust into a destiny he was never meant to have. I always describe this book as like a dark, modern Alice in Wonderland, and we all know how much I love Alice in Wonderland. It has a similar cast of really eccentric characters, and I think it's just brilliant. I really like this book. There is an engaged couple at the beginning of the book, but we don't really, it's not about them. And Richard does develop a little bit of a crush on one of the other characters, but it's rarely touched upon. It's very inconsequential to the plot and is barely ever mentioned, so I feel pretty confident putting it on this list. And it's just really good, or I thought it was really good, and I recommend it, so. Next up, we have The Woman in Black by Susan Hill, which is a gothic horror. It follows Arthur Kipps, who is that just a delightful last name, Kipps. Arthur is an up-and-coming solicitor, and he is sent to this small little countryside area to attend to the affairs of a recently deceased woman named Mrs. Alice Drablow of Eel Marsh House. He expects things to be pretty straightforward, but the townspeople won't speak to him about this woman at all. And he keeps seeing a strange figure dressed in black everywhere he goes. This is a very slow burn horror. The book itself is quite short, but it's about 80% build up, 20% payoff. So that might be frustrating to some people. The last 20 to 30 pages are pretty spooky. And, Arthur's too busy being terrified for his life to even contemplate romantic interest. He does have a fiance back home, but she's, not in the story, so it's fine. Next up, we have Siberia by Ann Halam? Halam? I'm not sure how you say it. It is a YA dystopian sci-fi. This is set in a world where all wild animals have gone extinct. Oh, I keep hitting my mic. I'm so sorry. But all the wild animals have gone extinct due to climate disasters. And Rosita, who is our main character, and her mother are sent to a prison camp after her mother is caught teaching science. To Rosita, her mother's science is magical. And years later, after Rosita gets sent to a prison school, her mother disappears, and Rosita must take a life or death journey across the frozen wasteland with a piece of her mother's magic, 5 little seeds of missing animal species that are the key to life, basically, and the knowledge to bring them back to life. So my partner and I are currently rereading this book together, which is why there's a bookmark in it. But I really, really enjoyed this book when I first read it. I've read it multiple times. and I'm rereading it very slowly. And the beginning is a bit slow, but honestly, it just didn't bother me at all. I really like this book. I always think of it as like a scientific fairy tale almost. I wouldn't say that the writing is anything spectacular. It's not bad. It's just nothing to write home about. And Rosita, who eventually changes her name to Slow, so Slow goes on this incredible journey in order to find her mother and save these little seeds. And yeah, it's just like a survival almost. And along the way, she has absolutely zero time for romantic pursuits. So, bonus! Next up, we have Most Things by Terry Pratchett. Hold up. Got Hogfather here. I'll hold this up. So Terry Pratchett writes fantasies, specifically fantasies set on the Discworld. So many of them have little to no focus on romantic relationships. Off the top of my head, if I'm remembering correctly, Hogfather, Equal Rights, Weird Sisters. I know those ones for sure. Pretty sure those ones for sure don't have any romantic interests or any romantic subplots. But most of them don't. And if they do, they're not a huge focus. Mort doesn't have one until the very end when one is kind of slipped in, but it's not really touched upon. So I feel safe recommending pretty much all of them. And yeah, they're just excellent books to read. So doubly recommend. And the final book that I'll be talking about today is Elatsoe by Darcie Little Badger. This is a YA magical realism / fantasy mystery. A lot of mysteries on this list. Elatsoe is a Lifan Apache girl living in an America very similar to ours, but with monsters and magic. She herself is capable of summoning the spirits or the ghosts of dead animals, something that is passed down in her family. And when Elatsoe's cousin is murdered in a seemingly picture-perfect town, she determines to use every last bit of her wit and skill in order to find the killer and protect her family from her cousin's vengeful ghost. I actually just finished this book and I really enjoyed it. It was very, very, very good. Writing was great. The characters are excellent. The world is inspired by a lot of Apache and indigenous legends, which is really unique and interesting. I just want to keep learning more and more about this world. And Ellie is such a great main character. She's resourceful, she's intelligent, she's confident without being cocky. And she's ace as a bonus. And she's best friends with a male cheerleader who isn't gay. There's just zero romantic tension between them. They're just good friends and I love them. As I love this book. That's all I really have to say about it. And those are the books on the list. I hope you found some that you are interested in picking up if you're looking for books without any romantic subplots. I would love to do another video on the same series. As I keep finding more, I will let you know. And until then, if you want to find me elsewhere, you can find me on Instagram at Leia Like the Princess, where you can also find my little store, Moonlit Cat Creations, or you can go directly to the website at moonlitcatcreations.com. And always remember to stay cozy.